Welcome back. We have heard what former Congressman David Jolly has to say about open primaries. Now let's get another former Florida Congressman, Patrick Murphy. Congressman, thanks and welcome back to the ABC 7 at 7. Let me start by asking you the same question I asked Congressman Jolly, which is, if you are a Republican or a Democrat, shouldn't you have the right to expect that it will be Republicans and Democrats who vote in their party's primary?
Well, this is sort of the crux of the question here. Because what you see happening both in Florida and really across the country is more and more people getting frustrated with this two-party system. More people being tired of the extremism they're seeing out of Republicans and Democrats and wanting a third option. You look at Florida, about 1/3 of the population in Florida are Democrats, 1/3 Republican, 1/3 independent or no party affiliation. Those 1/3 that are NPA or independents do not have a say in our primary system. So many people, could make the argument that about 1/3 of Florida, several million people, aren't going to influence who the ultimate, candidates are on the ballot, and therefore probably discouraged to even show up and vote because they didn't have a say in the process. I would rather have more people have access to the polls, give more people a voice in our democracy, which would encourage, I think, turnout in the primary, but often better turnout in the general election.
What impact do you think the current system has on the quality and the types of candidates that both parties nominate?
Well, what you're seeing in primaries, and start because of the gerrymandering, the districts that are drawn in such a manipulated way, but then beyond that, the small turnout in primaries is about 15% of the country is determining 90% of our representatives. That, of course, is not a true cross-section of our community, and that's why I think you're ending up with so much gridlock in the Congress or even in Tallahassee, because the politicians are pandering to the extremes. When independents and moderates oftentimes do not show up in these primaries, the base of both parties are dictating the policy. And the politicians know exactly who's going to show up to vote. They can tell you with pretty good certainty those several thousand people in a congressional district are going to vote, what they're going to vote on. Are they NRA members? Are they environmentalists? What are the magazines they read? What are the websites they go to? And they can put all this information into an algorithm and come up with pretty good certainty how you're going to vote, when you're going to vote, and what you're going to vote on. That, to me, is manipulating the system. I think it's better to have more people, involved in our primaries, more people that are capable of voting, and let the politicians and the candidates make an appeal to everybody based on what they think is right, not just to win an election.
I am wondering, when I think about open primaries, that if it's possible that people on either side can play some games. Let's say you have a very attractive Republican candidate who the Democrats may fear in the general election. Why not, put up somebody who could challenge that candidate and somehow manipulate the situation? If independents could vote for them, you may be messing up a situation where the Republican Party or the Democratic Party is able to get a candidate who has the best chance of winning.
Right. I think the same thing could be said about the system we have today, where you could have a Republican Party or a Democratic Party, whatever the case might be, fund a third-party candidate to sort of take away some votes from somebody. Or you could fund someone from, say you're a Republican and there's a strong Democrat in the race. You could fund, theoretically, a very liberal Democrat to hurt the current Democrat that's in the race or make him or her take positions that they otherwise wouldn't. So I think you can, if you're malicious, of course, always manipulate the elections to some degree or the other. But that gets into kind of the bigger structural problems we have in politics with the money, the outside, influence of money, that gerrymandering, the media, people's, time that they're dedicating to getting information and what's really behind each of these candidates' motives.
Obviously, that you and Congressman Jolly have been going around Florida and around the country talking about something that we don't see very much these days in terms of bipartisan leadership and bipartisan cooperation. But Tallahassee is pretty, you have a Republican governor and a large majorities of Republicans in both the state Senate and the state House. How likely would anybody up in Tallahassee be to open to this idea where you have open primaries?
I don't think they're going to be very open to it. I actually think the only way you're really going to get it done would be a ballot initiative, something put up by the voters where you got the necessary hundreds of thousands of signatures to make this a ballot initiative, get it approved by the authority to get it on the ballot, and voters decide, hey, do we want independents involved in the primaries? The way it is now, to your point, you have Republicans in charge of the governor's mansion and both chambers, the House and the Senate. It would be against their self-interest to have independents vote in primaries. Their members that are already in place and the power structure that they have already, kind of put together would really break down if that were the case. Not that they couldn't rebuild it in one way, but it would certainly hurt those in power right now. Therefore, I don't think they would ever vote for something. It would have to be done independent of Tallahassee itself and done by the voters.
A number of states do things in a different way than we do that here in Florida. For instance, in California, you have a primary situation where you have Republicans and Democrats and members of other parties or independents run in one primary, and the top two winners of that primary go on to the general election. I'm wondering if you think that is a system that you would like to see here in Florida.
This is a really interesting study in political science. California is, one of the states that's doing this right now, and I've talked to my friends on both sides of the aisle, and I've heard different stories and read different examples about whether this is working or not. It's certainly a case study worth examining, and I think we might need another year or two to really, watch the progress here. But in theory, it is forcing the candidates to solve problems, to get to the middle and get things done. And the voters are less likely to get the more extreme candidate on either party elected. I think ultimately that's a good thing. I think ultimately our voters and ourselves, we should all want, progress out of our government, generally speaking, and to see things move. I think it helps get that done. One example I could point to in California is, don't quote me exactly here, but something like over the last 10 to 15 years, California hasn't had a budget that got passed. Right after they did this new top two system where the top two candidates moved on from the primary to the general election, they passed the budget immediately. Maybe there's other reasons, I don't know. But that's a small example of how maybe people realize they better start working together, getting things done if they're going to get reelected.
All right, Congressman Patrick Murphy, thank you very much.